What's up, fam? It's your boy Zero Score here to tell you all about the best games no one's ever played. So smash that like button and get ready for... No. As long as I'm stuck down here with you, we are better than that. Oh, sorry. Just wanted to be like the popular people. Just do it your way.
Thanks. I will.
Sorry about him, but welcome back to the second part of my list of top underrated Nintendo DS games. This will be numbers 7 through 1 for those that haven't been keeping track. What do you think will be number 1? Let me know in the comments now. I'll know if you're cheating. While you write that down, let's roll that intro. This is another example, like Spirit Tracks from the last part, where it was a follow-up to one of the worst games in the series. In this case, the terribly named 500 Days of Summer divided by 0, or whatever the crap, and I think that's why a lot of people passed it over, but it was actually better than it had any right to be. It still has some quirks, don't get me wrong, and it doesn't help that it's actually the port of a Japanese mobile game, but it's also one of the only Kingdom Hearts games I've actually beaten, because the gameplay hooked me all the way to the end, whereas I usually get annoyed and fall off. It's essentially a retelling of the first Kingdom Hearts game, but from inside some kind of computer program, with the key Disney characters like Donald, Goofy, and Mickey watching it from the outside trying to get Sora out. There's the usual mystery surrounding people in dark hoods, but by the end I actually found myself really interested in where it was going. And it does add a bit to the overall world of the series, mostly focused on how Riku fits into it all. The game plays just like its console big brothers, just downsized to the DS, but it actually has a few mechanics that set it apart that I really like. For one, the upgrade mechanic in this game is on a chip grid, so as you defeat enemies or complete objectives, you receive chips for things like HP and strength. And as you slot them into the grid, you can chain together different pieces on the grid, and that completed circuit activates new abilities for Sora, which encourages the player to do better in the game to get more parts for the grid. Also, while the worlds on average are smaller than the original game, the goal is to remove the glitches from the worlds, so there are various points where you have to go into the coding of the world and kill special enemies to cleanse the area. And these are generally more platforming puzzle focused, which are kind of a fun wrinkle to the normal hack and slash elements of the series. The bosses also have some interesting mechanics, with each having multiple phases that mix up the tactics to take them out. While there are no new worlds in this game, it does enough to differentiate these worlds from the original game, while also bringing some cool new gameplay mechanics and not sacrificing the way the game plays. It definitely does a much better job at porting the gameplay to a handheld than, say, Chain of Memories. No dumb battle cards in this game. This game also did fairly well when it released, similar to Kirby Canvas Curse, but it's never gotten the same kind of praise that its prequel, Aria of Sorrow, did on the Game Boy Advance. And I think that's a shame, even though it did actually sell better than Aria. Not only is it just more technically impressive due to the increased graphical ability of the DS, but it also adds a larger variety of spirit abilities, which can be mapped to 3 options for different attack combinations. And it just has a larger scale due to the ability to mix 3D vector graphics in with the traditional sprites, and more graphic layers for more visually interesting landscapes and battles. It still has its fair share of unnecessary touchscreen gimmicks, but they don't detract from the game as much as some other examples, and in a few cases they can actually add a fun challenge to puzzle rooms. I'll admit, Aria of Sorrow is my favorite Castlevania game. It's the epitome of the Metroidvania genre, outside of the Metroid series itself, of course. But Dawn of Sorrow is actually the only Castlevania game I've ever beaten, so I'm very familiar with it, and despite the aforementioned DS gimmicks, it's one of my favorite DS games in general, underrated or not. The fluid controls, awesome abilities, satisfying weapon variety, and super cool enemy designs deserve all the love it never got, and for a system without a true classic Metroid experience, this game is a must-play on the handheld. The DS had a surprising amount of Final Fantasy games, but the only ones that really seemed to catch on were the absolutely stellar remakes of Final Fantasy 3 and 4. This one, however, is notable as the best game to bear the Crystal Chronicles name. Unlike the GameCube original that came before it, this one was a more straightforward adventure narrative. No Moogle companion holding a safety crystal for you to keep aware of, no dangerous life-stealing miasma, no picking up quests and enemy grinding. This game tells the story of two twins with a mysterious connection to a crystal who get caught up in an even more mysterious evil plot. While they journey together, you only control the one you choose at the start, male or female, and the action plays out in real time. You navigate areas, attacking creatures with an impressive variety of moves, and collect the random stuff they drop. You also have limited use magic orbs that can be guided to hit different creatures or used in puzzles to get to other areas of the map. The touchscreen gimmicks are pretty minimal too, only used as a way to quick select different magic and items, or switch to a different party member. Because if you play in single player, you eventually have 4 party members that all have different special abilities for different puzzle situations, adding a layer of strategy to the game. Otherwise, these 4 characters can be controlled by real people in wireless multiplayer, similar to the original Crystal Chronicles, but without the expensive link cable to GBA setup it required. The game also has a really nice art style and a good amount of voice acting, which just adds to the already impressive production value they stuffed into this cartridge. And before you try to correct me, I know this game had a sequel, but it wasn't as good because it came out on both DS and Wii, and that made it awkward and clunky on both in order to accommodate the different control schemes on each hardware device. This one, on the other hand, was another surprising example of a totally original follow-up to a popular console title that just didn't get the same recognition as its console counterpart. Okay, show of hands. Who has actually heard of this game? Or its prequel on the Game Boy Advance that never actually got translated to English, so I couldn't put it on the Game Boy Advance list. Yeah, that's what I thought. Probably just Pinstripe Eragon. Hey Chris, did I assume correctly? To everyone else, you should familiarize yourself with this game, because it was one of the best turn-based RPGs of its time. The barrier to entry was a bit overwhelming, especially to us Westerners that didn't have the more simplistic prequel to ease into the mechanics, but it was worth learning. Essentially, it was all about elemental attacks tied to astrological signs, and the planetary alignment at any given time shifting the power of different elements. So there's a normal elemental weakness chart, such as water being good against fire, and fire being good against grass, but also from day to day, the top screen would show the planets and their rotation, and each day a different element would be stronger than the others. Also, the main character would choose between light or dark, which are only good or bad against each other, and they would be more effective during night or day, respectively. On top of that, position in battle plays a major factor because only the characters in the front row can attack normally, but they can only attack enemies in the front row. Characters in the back can't attack, but their magic attacks all enemies instead of just one, and they can't be hit by regular attacks from enemies. Magic can always attack anyone. So, at any given time, you're not only juggling party position, but making sure that whatever element is strongest at the moment is in the position to do the most damage to the most enemies. I want to reiterate, this is a turn-based RPG, not a tactical one. The amount of depth to the battle system is pretty awesome, and the game itself is a lot of fun too. It has a cool futuristic fantasy feel to it, as the party takes off to these different planets that provide them with their power, and a search to find a missing friend, and have to go from planet to planet recollecting everyone that got separated. It has some hints of Earthbound in its fun dialogue and cosmic themes, but with an art style more like the Mana series, which is fitting since it comes from Brownie Brown, the game studio that made a lot of the Mana games. It has some really nice sprite animations, but also occasionally uses cinematic cutscenes when it can't portray the action with the sprites, and it's just generally a truly unique experience that not many other RPGs can compare to. If you're in the mood for a classic, sprawling epic that's not a known franchise, such as Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, or Shin Megami, you could do a lot worse than this. It's pretty common knowledge that the only thing I love more than video games is basketball. But despite that very well-known fact, I still don't think anyone would have expected a Mario sports game on a list of underrated games, because they're usually just loved or awful. No in between. But this is one that seemed to have flown under the radar, possibly because it was a third-party collaboration with Square, which is just a weird pairing in the first place for a sports game. Or maybe because it was the first and only Mario basketball title. But that's a shame, because it was some of the most fun I had on my DS growing up. It's far from a perfect game, and one of the worst offenders of overusing touchscreen gimmicks. But once you get past the learning curve, it's one of the most technical and satisfying Mario sports games ever made. For starters, it just looks really good. The attention to detail on the courts are unrivaled by anything aside from maybe first-party Nintendo games like Mario Kart, and the way each court has its own gimmicks, such as the randomized effects of the slots in the Bowser Jr. Casino stage, add an extra layer of complexity to the matches, especially in the main single-player tourney mode where you rise to the ranks and unlock all the content, similar to the Grand Prix in Mario Kart. Aside from the technical achievements, this game manages to be a fully fleshed-out basketball game, while also servicing the uniqueness of the Mario brand. You tap the touchscreen to dribble, but dribbling on question blocks gives items and coins, which can be used to mess up enemies on defense, or increase your point total on offense. You swipe the touchscreen in a direction to pass to one of your two teammates, and swipe up to shoot the ball, either from behind the line for more points, or up close for a stylish and unique slam dunk, which can even be milked for some extra coins before you make the shot, assuming you don't get knocked out of the way. On defense, swiping can knock the ball away from the opposing team, or jumping up to block their shots, and fleeing turtle shells or banana peels can trip them up at just the right moment for you to get back on the offensive. The way this game integrates Mario's fun style into the traditional basketball formula is enough to put it this high on the list, but it's the fact that it's made by Square that puts it over the top. Even when the sometimes finicky touchscreen controls can be kinda frustrating, or the computer AI can seem way too smart, there's one ridiculously charming element that makes this game unforgettable for me. The guest characters. The roster includes the usual Mario staples, as well as a few pleasant surprises such as Dixie Kong, Boo, and Paratrooper. But as you go through the tourney, you'll eventually unlock Final Fantasy staples as well, such as Black Mage, Moogle, and Cactuar. They're all amazing additions, and Moogle is absolutely adorable. But, I tell you what, there are few moments in gaming more satisfying than dunking on the haters as a fantasy cactus monster. This might be a controversial pick, but you have to realize that this game didn't do that well on the DS. It made it on the sales charts in the week it released, but never even passed lifetime sales of 1 million on the system, which isn't great for a new entry in a very popular franchise on a system with over 100 million units. Even after multiple ports to PSP and mobile devices, it's still considered the black sheep of the franchise. And that's a shame because it was truly original and had a lot of modern conveniences, such as quick selection of weapons on the touchscreen, larger map real estate always on screen, convenient access to email for mission objectives, and precision touch aiming for thrown items like Molotovs. The game itself was surprisingly cinematic also, using lightly animated headshots for mission cutscenes, though sadly lacking voice acting, and a fully 3D rendered, top-down view with dynamic camera angles. It combined a lot of the elements of modern GTA games with the gameplay style of the classic GTA games on PS1 and Dreamcast, and also added in unique mechanics only possible on the DS, and melded it with a surprisingly engaging story about an Asian slacker convinced to join the drug trade after getting caught up in a complicated double-cross over a family heirloom. The driving mechanics still feel just as good as the AAA console releases, and the combat is surprisingly fluid thanks to a smart lock-on system and simple controls. This game also changed the wanted system in a cool way, where you have to take out a certain number of cop cars to drop your wanted level, which leads to a much more destructive and fun way to get out of danger. The most unique part of this game, however, are the new features that make use of the DS touchscreen. This is easily the most gimmicky game on this list, but somehow it works. Everything from breaking a windshield, to creating Molotovs, to unloading drugs, to even teaching players how to hotwire a car, are represented here in little touchscreen mini-games that all help break up the typical GTA gameplay. Some of these are pretty dumb, or just kind of annoying, but it is novel to feel more engaged in the activities. And it's more realistic to get into a random car and have to actually get it working before you drive off. Plus, like, I think I know how to hotwire a car now?
Okay, let's figure out how to do this. Okay, so we just put this in the... Well, crap. Guess it's back to selling drugs.
With yet another release of the original Okami on the way, I couldn't possibly have a list of underrated games without including its sequel, the DS follow-up that even less people played than the original. That's right, a lot of you probably didn't even know this game happened, but it did, and it's actually fantastic. For anyone that scoffed at me for including a DS Zelda game on this list because of how different they are from the console games, look no further than Okami did, because it basically does a better Zelda than Spirit Tracks does, and I love that game too. For those that don't know, Okamiden follows Chibiterisu, the son of the original game's protagonist, the sun goddess Amaterasu, as he ventures out on his own to follow in his mother's footsteps. This is basically how they get around starting over without all the powers the player gained during the first journey, without just pulling a Metroid and randomly depowering the main character. But this new pup isn't as strong as his mother, and has to find his own strength to save the land again from a strange evil that's blotted out the sun. He acquires a small boy companion to help him, which is a sentence I never thought I'd have to say, and they make their way through various dungeons full of enemies, puzzles, and treasure, all while he meets the various animal gods, who also have adorable children. Seriously, look at them. They're so cute. I'm gonna shut up, actually. Just watch how cute they are. Anyway, the game plays identically to its console prequel, which is pretty amazing when you think about the power of the DS in comparison, and it also looks great. The touchscreen is used perfectly as well, as the celestial brush from the first game returns with even more complicated uses. And the stylus is just what you need to trace the exact designs with ease. Well, with relative ease. I was using a mouse, okay? It's harder. The first Okami was originally released on PS2 before being ported to Wii, then PS3, and now current-gen consoles. But even on the Wii, the brush techniques always felt kind of slow and clunky. But they're right at home on the DS, and that's why in some ways this game is even better than its predecessor. The abilities our little wolf friend gets are also great for the system, as him and his boy slave have to work together to traverse dangerous obstacles to make it to safety. And combining their respective skills is always satisfying in a way that Ichi and Amaterasu never really were. And did I mention this game is beautiful? The art style works really well on the DS, and the more cinematic sections really show off the color and detail in the scenery. Plus the characters are all very lively and well animated, and this scene is kind of making me uncomfortable. Should I come back later while you two finish? Yeah. I'm just gonna go. So now there you have it. The full list. I did promise some more obscure entries on this one. I hope I didn't disappoint. If there's still any I missed, please let me know. And if you have fond memories of any of these, definitely share that too. And please, if there's any of these you haven't heard of, but think you would enjoy, check them out. There are plenty of ways to find them, though some of these more obscure titles might be a bit expensive in physical release now. It's hard to tell how these things age. I love doing lists like this, though. Really gets into that obscure nostalgia. So let's keep the conversation going. Oh, what? Now you want my input? No, I really don't. That's not what I... Never mind. I'm ending this video, so I don't have to talk to you anymore. Until next time, have fun. Ha! I said the thing this time. Get fun. That guy is gonna get me demonetized. Hard enough getting noticed on YouTube these days without that kind of language. What a turd. Whew. Sorry. Thanks for watching. Have fun. I just figured since news of Virtual Console on the Switch hasn't been great so far, it might be fun to reminisce some more about some games that are readily available to play through other means. Oh, that was a pirate wink. I realized that was probably confusing. But yeah, I might as well give these unknown gems some pirate love, since Nintendo isn't getting around to letting us buy them anytime soon. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Reggie. Please don't terminate me.